Ever wonder what happens in your brain when you experience love?
Well, researchers at Aalto University are actually mapping out love using fMRI technology.
It's like they're creating a brain atlas of love, and
It's really fascinating stuff.
it is, it is. So they had 55 parents, already pros at love,
Right.
hooked up to this fMRI machine and had them listen to stories meant to bring out different types of love, parental love, romantic love, the whole spectrum.
Yeah, and they were looking at the brain activity in real time as these parents experience these different kinds of love.
I'm already hooked.
Oh.
So what'd they find? Did our brains light up like fireworks on the 4th of July?
Kind of. They found that no matter what type of love people were feeling,
Mm.
two specific areas of the brain consistently lit up.
Like a universal love signature.
Exactly. One was the basal ganglia, which is linked to that feeling of reward, like, yeah, this is good. And the other was the precuneus.
Precuneus. Okay, what's that one all about?
It's involved in self-awareness and how we see ourselves in relation to others.
Okay, so whether it's the warm fuzzies we get from our dog or that heart skipping a beat feeling when we see our partner, our brains have dedicated zones for love.
Absolutely. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The intensity of that brain activity, it wasn't always the same.
Oh, so like some types of love pack more of a punch than others.
Precisely. And one type really stood out from the rest. Parental love.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What was going on in the brains of these parents?
Parental love, it triggered the strongest response in the reward system, particularly an area called the striatum.
The striatum, what's that?
Think of it like the brain's high-five center. Every time it encounters something pleasurable or rewarding, boom, the striatum lights up, releasing a surge of feel-good chemicals.
So like that yes feeling when you finally achieve a goal or take a bite of your favorite dessert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it seems parental love triggers a similar, if not stronger, response in that same area of the brain.
Wow. But why would parental love be such a powerful brain booster?
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes perfect sense.
How so?
Strong parent-child bonds are crucial for survival, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Those intense feelings of love and reward, they motivate parents to care for their children, ensuring their survival and ultimately the continuation of the species.
It's fascinating how biology and emotions are so intertwined. Okay, so we've talked about parental love, but what about romantic love? Surely that must set off some fireworks in the brain.
It does light up the brain, but maybe not in the way you'd think.
Oh.
So romantic love, it activates similar brain regions as other types of interpersonal love.
Wait, so like my brain reacts the same way whether I'm thinking about my best friend or my spouse?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
It's not just about which brain regions light up, but also the intensity of the activity.
Oh, I see. So like it's the same song but played at different volumes?
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about it. Your brain probably doesn't react as intensely to a coworker you get along with
Right.
compared to, say, your partner, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
The emotional depth, the shared history, all those things play a role in how strongly your brain responds.
Okay, that's really cool. Our brains have like a built-in love meter or something.
We could say that.
So this brings me to my next question.
Right.
What about the love we feel for, well, non-humans? Like, I'm obsessed with my dog, he's family.
The age-old question. Do our brains love fur babies the same way we love humans?
Right.
Well, when it comes to pets or even nature, the study found that the social cognition areas of the brain, the ones that help us navigate relationships and understand emotions, they weren't as active.
So you're saying our brains don't see our pets as, like, social beings?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
There was a fascinating difference between pet owners and non-pet owners in the study.
Really?
When pet owners thought about their furry friends, they did show increased activity in those social cognition areas.
Hold on, are you saying that owning a pet actually changes our brains?
It's a possibility. It all comes down to neuroplasticity, this incredible ability of our brains to rewire and reshape themselves.
So all those hours I spend cuddling with my dog,
Right.
playing fetch, my brain's soaking it all up and changing because of it.
It's definitely possible. And it has huge implications for how we understand the bond between humans and animals.
Right.
It suggests it's not just about emotional comfort.
Right.
These relationships,
Yeah.
they can actually shape our neural pathways.
This is mind-blowing, but before we go too far down the pet brain rabbit hole, what does all of this, all this brain stuff mean for our understanding of mental health?
That's a great question.
Right. It's got to be relevant somehow, right?
Absolutely. Knowing how love operates in the brain, how it can shape us and be shaped by us, it opens up all these new possibilities for mental health treatment.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
For example, Think about conditions like attachment disorders,
Okay.
which can often stem from early childhood experiences of neglect, right?
Right.
Imagine if we could develop therapies that specifically target the brain regions involved in attachment and reward.
So instead of just talking about those early experiences,
Exactly. We could potentially help rewire those neural pathways, promote healthier attachment patterns.
so we're talking about using the power of love, backed by neuroscience, to heal and promote well-being.
Precisely. And it's not just limited to attachment disorders either.
Really?
Its knowledge could be huge for relationship issues, social anxiety, even depression and loneliness, all these things that often stem from a lack of meaningful connection.
Wow, this is groundbreaking stuff. So we're on the verge of like a paradigm shift in mental health care.
It's an exciting time, and it goes beyond just treating existing conditions, too.
Oh.
This research can inform how we approach parenting, education, social policies,
Yeah.
all with the goal of fostering healthier, more connected individuals and communities.
This conversation has been amazing. We've gone from decoding brain scans to the future of mental health care, all thanks to love.
It really shows how interconnected everything is.
Speaking of connections, there's one finding we haven't quite unpacked yet,
Yeah.
the whole pet owner brain thing. Can we circle back to that?
Of course. It's a perfect example of how this research raises more questions than answers.
And who doesn't love a good mystery, right?
Exactly.
So to recap, the study found that pet owners' brains, they showed more activity in those social cognition areas
Right.
compared to people without pets. And it's like, why? Is it that animal lovers' brains are just like wired differently from the start?
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
And this study, it doesn't give us all the answers,
Okay.
but it opens up some really interesting possibilities.
Like what?
Well, one theory is that people who are naturally more empathetic, more drawn to social connection, they might be more likely to become pet owners in the first place.
So maybe it's not that our pets are changing our brains,
Right.
but our brains are kind of influencing our choice of companions.
Exactly. Think about it. Certain personality traits, maybe even things that happened in early childhood,
Right.
they could lead people to find a lot of joy, a lot of fulfillment in that bond with a pet.
Makes sense. But what about the whole, like, neuroplasticity thing?
Yeah. Is there any actual proof that having a pet can, rewire our brains?
There's definitely a growing amount of research that seems to suggest that,
Oh, really?
yeah, studies have shown that interacting with animals, especially in a loving way, in a way that means something, it can actually lead to, like, measurable changes in brain activity.
Wow.
Huh?
So, what kinds of changes are we talking about?
Well, for example, some research has found that spending time with pets can actually lower your cortisol levels.
Cortisol, that's the stress hormone, right?
Exactly.
So those warm, fuzzy feelings we get from cuddling with our furry friends, it's not just, in our heads.
Right.
It's actually affecting our brain chemistry.
Exactly. And it's not just about stress reduction either. There are other studies that have shown that interacting with animals can increase levels of oxytocin.
Oxytocin, that's the...
It's often called the love hormone or the cuddle chemical.
Yeah.
Because it's associated with social bonding and feeling closer to people, feeling like you can trust them. So basically, our brains are like, give me all the cuddles, give me all the furry friends.
It seems like it.
It's amazing to me that something as simple as petting a dog or playing with a cat can have such a big impact on our brains.
It really speaks to how connected our minds and bodies are, and how even little interactions can have this ripple effect on how we feel overall.
This whole deep dive has been so interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
We talked about how love shows up in the brain, how it's different for different people, how it can literally reshape our neural pathways. It's pretty incredible to think that something we often think of as just, emotional actually has this real physical presence in our bodies.
It really highlights the power of love, not just as this idea, but as a force that shapes who we are, our relationships, how we see the world.
As we wrap things up here, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Okay.
As you go about your day, I want you to really pay attention to all the different ways you experience love.
That's a great idea.
Whether it's love for a partner, a family member, a friend, a pet, heck, even a deep appreciation for nature, just notice how those experiences make you feel. What thoughts come up for you? How do those feelings show up in your body?
Your brain is always learning, always changing, based on what you experience.
It's like we're always works in progress.
Exactly. And by cultivating love and connection in all its different forms, you're essentially shaping your brain for greater happiness, resilience, well-being.
What a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the neuroscience of love.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep your minds curious, your hearts open, and remember, love truly does make the world go round.